So for those of you who would like to know a little bit about how to start the charter application process, I think the first thing to research and look at is, does your state even allow a charter that is considered hybrid or independent study? A lot of states do not even allow this type of education. So that would be the first thing to look at, is to see if your state will allow it. In California, and then the rules for each state are a little bit different, so you would have to look up the rules. I would suggest getting a consultant for your state, or talking to someone, or doing a lot of reading for your state. I know California, and again, the charter that was initially started was started by a management company, but the last 5 charters that I had to do were me. So I've been through the experience of how to do it in California. So I think the first thing is you need to have passion and a mission and vision, and we've kind of talked about that in a lot of sessions, that in starting this process, you have to be clear on what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and then you get to put it into words and put it into a charter petition. My first charter petition, the original, was 35 pages long. The last 5 that I did were 1,000 pages. It has changed over the last 22 years in California. So the founding board is probably the first thing you need to get together. Again, like we talked about this morning, is you need to get a group of people, and hopefully they're people that owe you favors, so you don't have to pay to be able to get their advice, but you'll need an attorney to go over certain things. You'll need to start your 501c3 nonprofit. At least that's how we're organized. And in California, that's, I think, the only way you can be organized is as a nonprofit. For-profit charter schools are not allowed in California. You have to have articles of incorporation. You have to get an EIN number, an employer identification number. Let's see if I can figure it out. And you have to apply with the Secretary of State every other year. So there's all of this operational type of stuff that a lot of educators do not do, and a lot of passionate parents may not know are involved in starting this organization, which is part of why getting a consultant, or doing your due diligence and reading on what your state needs, is important. Then you need to get your group of families and parents that you're looking at trying to start, because your audience, they're your cheerleaders, and they're going to be helping you kind of get this going. You need to submit your charter petition to a district in California. Again, every state is different. She had to submit it to the state charter school board. That's the only way she can be chartered. In some states, it's different entities. So again, you would have to know what your state will allow and do. And the biggest part, I think, is to start the conversation and to start building the relationship. The difficult part is the process generally takes a while, and so people change, especially on elected boards, and even superintendents change. So you can be working with this district, working with the district board, and then all of a sudden elections happen, people change, someone moved, a new person was appointed. So the relationship part and sharing what you're doing and sharing what your vision is a big part of getting started on getting a charter, because I always call it, that's your mother and you're the baby. And you have to have a mother in the charter school world in order to be able to go on. So having a good relationship with mom is always a good idea. And just because you know a little bit about me, originally we had one parent, Julian Union was our authorizer. We now have 4 authorizers within our organization for the 6 charters. So it just multiplied the work when we had to multiply going out. But we have a great relationship with all of them, so that's great. The next thing is you have to get handbooks made. We kind of talked about all of that this morning, and again, consultants are good. The one thing I love about the charter school world and the charter school community is we share. So if someone already has one, you can ask and you can get copies of things and then revert it. Again, a lawyer's going to have to look at it to make sure it's correct for you and in your world. But our 35-page charter was just kind of hitting the elements that they were back then, and it was a lot of kind of broad strokes of what we were going to do. And I liked the vagueness in it, in the sense that we could change and adapt as our student population or our teachers would change and adapt throughout the time period. Now it is, well, most of our authorizers now are very strategic in making sure you say exactly what you're going to do. Vagueness is a little bit harder to get away with in this particular day and age. So that's part of the reason why our charter is now 1,000 pages. But it is also, they want to see your org chart, they want to see your articles of incorporation, they want to see your 501c3, they want to see your employee handbook, they want to see your SELPA plan and handbook, they want to see all of your policies and procedures. So now the appendices is what, 700 or 800 pages within your charter that you have to turn in. So it's a lot of work to get started, and it's always great if you have a team of people that can do it, either within your organization or if within the state you do. When I met Kim, because we were going to do this presentation together, she's all alone in her state, and I'm like, look, there's all of us. We're all doing the same thing. We're all working together. We're all local. So that was it. Then you have to figure out your leadership, especially, you know, if your parents, a group of parents that are getting together that are trying to get your charter school started. Do you, or are one of you going to be leading it? Or do you need to look for someone who is a passionate leader of the school? And again, it has to be someone, I hate to say this, but is willing to give a lot to be able to open these schools. I was sharing with the ladies last night that my husband asked my kids when they were a little bit older what they remembered about mom growing up, and it was that she was always in front of her computer. So you have to be aware as a mom that you have to be a mom when you're at home and focus on them, but this job takes a lot of time to be able to do. So are you guys going to be doing it as parents? Are you going to hire somebody to do it? All of that would need to be in your charter petition and thought of ahead of time. You need to, at least in California now, they want the scope and sequence of your curriculum. So you have to map all of that out ahead of time. And again, it was, I don't want to say easy for us. We kept asking our authorizers, who are asking us for all of these details. Are you kidding me? It's in the textbook. Why do we need to? Anyway, state standards, why do we need to? We had to put all of that stuff in. Then you also, because you're a public school and you're getting public funds, you have to do special ed services. And when you're a charter school, you have to do the full spectrum of special ed services. So you have to be able to offer everything, and then you have to join a SELPA. So again, when you're in that relationship with your authorizer, you need to talk about it, because sometimes they want control of that, sometimes you want control of that, and you're working with a SELPA. So we have in California, which has been a beautiful outcropping of the charter school movement in California, a charter SELPA, which has been extremely effective. So it's only charter schools that are in there, and in fact, districts are wanting to join the charter SELPA now because we've played around with and changed the way SELPAs operate, and we've come up with a model that's a very effective model. So we have had both. We've had charters where the district is our LEA and goes to the SELPA meetings for us, and now all 6 charter schools that I run are our own LEA, and we have El Dorado County SELPA, or charter SELPA, that we use in San Diego. So that would be another piece of the puzzle that you would have to figure out before you submit your charter petition. The other parts that you need to work on, of course, are the office parts. How is payroll going to work? How are warrants going to work when you're writing your checks? You have to have insurance. I would suggest maybe hiring a back office service provider to start, because there's a lot of intricacies, especially with policies or with payroll, that you need to make sure. You have to decide what kind of a retirement system are you going to offer. In California, we have the ability, at least we did with the initial charter, we had the ability to join the public retirement system, STRS and PERS. There was a while there where you could not join PERS because PERS said, you know, you're a 501c3, you're not a school, you can't join. And so there was a moratorium for, I think it was 8 years. So a lot of schools started 401ks for their classified employees, but teachers often wanted that STRS retirement system. So again, depending on who you're working with and what is the best retirement system that you would like to implement in your world. Now, ironically, in fact, this legislative system, PERS and STRS is going through as a mandate to all new charter schools opening, so that freedom and flexibility and choice might be lost. Fortunately, there is in the law that if you have already been established as a person or as a 401k type of school, then you're allowed to continue being a 401k, and any new school you start would have to be stirred. So I can't even imagine that I would have to do two different systems for the schools. But anyway, that is California. And that's the other thing I would do is make sure you're writing into your charter something that is a school site council or a stakeholder group of people so that you have input from more than just one avenue. My authorizers have been very vocal about wanting to make sure that the student and the parent and the staff are involved in decisions and decision making. So making sure that a school site council or something where stakeholder involvement is in there. Do you have any other thoughts on additions to?
No, I think it's all very overwhelming.
Yes, it is. You didn't have to write your charter, right?
No, and I was going to say that. There's three of you in here that I don't know. Are you interested in starting a charter? That's why you're here? Yeah? And all in different states?
Michigan.
Michigan?
I've started one in North Carolina.
Okay, so you're already there?
Yeah, I work with several charters.
Okay, so you're already there too as well. Okay, all right. I just kind of wanted to see who our audience was and what the needs were. I think as I thought about our topic, it's an overwhelming topic, I feel like. And I feel like it's one of those things. I started as a homeschool mom with needs for my children and a need for a job because my husband was he was chronically ill and was getting sicker. And so I had a charter school that approached me. I had taught pottery class for them. And they approached me and said, hey, we want to start a homeschool program and we want you to build it for us. And I said, no. And he asked me again and I said, no. And then he asked me again and I said, hell no, I'm not doing that because there's just no way that I can abide by the state law as well as create a program that meets the needs of families. And just to do that just felt incredibly, but I really needed a job. So he hired me the 1st of June to open a program with 300 students in August. And I did. Created a program, it was state approved, and we opened in August. And it was magical. We had amazing kids, amazing families. We did all sorts of things. We had 5 different locations that we built and just did all sorts of fun stuff, and the state approved us. And that was great. And then I just started getting the phone calls from all the parents all over saying, we want more, we want more, we want more. We have a cap of how many seats we can fill, and I could only have 300 kids, that's all I could do, and kept getting the calls. And so I decided I wanted to be a consultant. So went out and started consulting with schools that already existed, charter schools that already existed, that had, our language was distance back then, that had a distance written in their charter so that we could create a distance program. And so I consulted with, I think it was 4 other schools, I can't remember, to create the distance program. Same thing, created a program, pulled in a bunch of kids, created a lot of happiness, it was great. But every time the state would see me shift to another school, they would start attacking that school. And it just became a real problem. Yeah, I know, right? Became a real problem. And so I ended up settling at one school, and it's a school, I now have 700 kids, that's this one, Canyon Grove Academy. I landed at that school, the school already existed, it had been there for, well now if I go back now, it's been there for 12 years, they've had a distance program for 10 years. I landed there about 6 years ago. The state started really attacking me 4 years ago. They claimed that I didn't have distance written in my charter. I did, but there was just this confusion. They said I didn't. The charter they had on file said it didn't. My charter that I had said it did. So I had to go to battle with them. And so I filed an amendment application. So it's the beginning is not the end. The beginning is the beginning, and it keeps on going. So I filed a 72-page amendment application because they needed all the ins and outs, and it wasn't good enough. Then they wanted me to file an Exhibit A, and I know you probably don't know what any of these terms are, but then that wasn't good enough. And then they had me come in to a board meeting. And it was, for us in Utah, the board meeting was on the very day that the governor announced, he announced at 12 o'clock that every school in the state was going to distance education. he announced that everybody went distance. At 12:30, they put me on probation for being in distance education. Made no sense whatsoever. A few months later, they sent me an email saying we're shutting your school immediately. And then it started this, you know, you never really know what the truth is, right? So I started hearing all these different stories. And one of the stories I heard was, well, actually, they want to apologize to you because what they did to you was a little crazy, putting you on probation for distance. And then they called us into another board meeting. And this was, you know, right during COVID, so there was no, it was all online. So it was an online board meeting. We called them up to the day before saying, why are we coming into this board meeting? And they would tell us nothing, nothing. The night before we called them, we said, can we just see what your presentation is so we kind of know? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So we landed at that board meeting. I actually had COVID, and so I had a brain that would not function. If you've ever had it, but my brain would not function. My head hurt so bad, and I said to my board, you guys need to take care of this. Don't even ask me a question because there's no way I'm going to be able to answer this. And so I went into that meeting and they started this attack. They had a 45-minute presentation, which wasn't prepared the night before, yes. They had a 45-minute presentation, and a lot of that presentation was attack on my school, but it was also attack on me personally. They accused me of doing all sorts of things, but all were lies. So I had that, and my board is texting me, Kim, you've got to defend yourself. You've got to defend yourself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? So for 2.5 hours, I was grilled in a public meeting. The state attorney was there, and you know, and the board, and amazing people on the state charter school board. You know, I have lawyers, I have businessmen, I have superintendents, I have all sorts of incredible people who were being told all these lies about me and about my school. And so for 2.5 hours, I'm grilled backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Well, let me back up a bit and tell you a little bit about me so that you understand a bit what that meeting meant to me. So. Oh, and now the emotion starts.
Yes.
You're among friends.
This is the passion.
I know.
This is the passion that you need in a leader.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't graduate high school. I come from a very poor background. And when I was 16, somebody offered me a job, which was so crazy. Don't ever do that to somebody. And because they offered me a job, my parents said, yes, you have to take the job. They needed the income. I totally get that. I have no background, I have no education, I have no paper that says you're amazing. I just don't have that. Could somebody write that for me?
Yes.
But anyway, I have no paper that says that. So here I am in this meeting, back in this meeting, with these people who are incredible, who have lots and lots and lots of papers, right? And I have nothing. And I felt like this big going into the meeting, but I battled backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. By then, I knew my stuff. I knew that what the state law said about what homeschooling is and what homeschooling isn't. I knew all these things, and I battled them backwards and forwards. They started that meeting saying, you are being shut down immediately. Immediately. We were in school. Immediately. That's how serious they thought it was. They ended the meeting going, wow, we kind of like your school. We need to know a couple more things and you're good to go. That was a huge turnaround that in the history of charter schools, in my state had never ever happened before. If they say you're done, you are done, it's over. And I made it all the way through. So here's this little girl with no paper, sat down at the end of that meeting, and it was a defining moment for me, where I was like, I did something. I did something really, really hard, and I survived it. My point is, doesn't matter who you are, you can start a charter school and you'll make it through. So one of the things that I teach my kids all the time, my kids and my 700 kids, is we can do hard things. When my kids were asked what they remembered about their mom, they said, my mom does hard things. Isn't that awesome? So I wanted to show you why I do hard things and why you will do hard things. You will find your why. This is my why. All right, so this is me, this is my family. I have 7 kids and 7 grandkids. And they're obviously my why. They're everybody's why, right? It's all about babies. But the other why for me, why I go through all the hassle of getting the funding from the state, is because of what we can do with it, what we can provide for our kids. I don't know about you, but I pay taxes. And I feel like if I'm paying taxes for my kids' education, I should be able to get some of that and be able to utilize it, right? So that's why. I look at all my babies' faces, all these 700 beautiful faces. I look at all the things we provide for them, the 56,000 square foot building, all the resources, all the supplies, all the everything. During COVID, I turned our school into a farm because I'm a little bit crazy. And so, you know, now it sits on 6 acres and we have a farm. And just to see the kids' faces light up, look at those happy faces. With all the different things that they get to experience on the farm, that's my why. I go out and milk my cow in the morning. I know that's crazy too, but that's my why. And here, I love this picture up in the top corner of me with those goats because I was late for a really important meeting that day because I was helping mama goat deliver baby goats. How awesome is that? That is my why. And I think that's what we need to find for each of us is, yeah, doing a charter school is really hard. It's hard to start, it's hard to continue, it's hard to fight, it's hard to deal with all the policies and everything else in the state and whoever else your authorizer is. It's hard, but at the end of the day, this is why I do it. It's for all of the things that I can provide for all of my people who I love. And I look at the fact that I didn't get to get an education. I didn't get to have that because my family was too poor. But I can now provide that for other families. These kids ice skating, some of them had never been ice skating before. Something as simple as that I can provide. So charter schools are ugly and they're hard and they're challenging. But yeah, find your why and make it worth it.
I'd love to open it up to questions.
You did lead it first.
This is for Kim.
Oh, yay!
Almost got it.
I'm saying you should all receive. I love it.
Kim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Does a piece of paper prove that you've gotten an education? Or is there such thing as self-directed education?
There is absolutely a thing as self-directed education. And I totally believe in that. And I don't believe that you need to have the piece of paper. I'm evidence of that, right? I sit at the table with all the other people who have doctorates and everything else. I sit at the table with them. But that moment for me was such a defining moment that I can sit at the table with you now. Whereas before, my judgment was upon myself, that I felt less than because of the situation that I had been put in. But that's what I want for my children. My 700 children. I don't ever want them to feel less than. And the only reason I have 700 children is because that's all the state will allow me to have. I have a waiting list of another 700 children, and it breaks my heart that I cannot provide for them what I have provided for the 700 that I have.
She needs to replicate.
I need to replicate. Well, now that I've fought the state so much, and
they might let you.
So is that what's the reason you can't serve those? Is it the state saying we put a cap on you? Is it charter authorized? Like, who is the actual person and what is their...
In Utah, we have one, well, we have some other authorizers, but we only really have one that's doing any authorizing. And they have authorized 130. But because of that, they have a monopoly, right?
Sure.
They can treat us how they want. They can ask of us what they want. They can do it however they want to do it. Which I think the answer from me in my state is to have more authorizers.
Right.
And then we have more,
for a long time.
Yes. Then we have more of the ability to innovate because charters were started to innovate, to be innovative. And now they have come back to me, some of these people who've been fighting me for so long, and said, Kim, you have pushed us to our limits. You are so innovative, you pushed, and they are appreciating it. They're saying thank you, which I didn't ever expect to hear, but they're saying thank you. But I'm hoping that opens the way for others behind us to innovate. But yeah.
Think about if you had had your school in Australia when you wouldn't have had to choose between work and school.
I would hope not.
You could have,
Yeah.
It's an equity issue to provide a flexible school environment for public dollars.
Right. And I love all of the hybrid homeschooling private models that everybody's created.
It has been so fun listening to all the difference.
But I just worry about what about the kids?
That's right.
What about the kids whose families can't afford it? That to me is where my heart is at.
And it's most kids. It's not just like the small left, or it's like 50% of kids in America, whatever the stats are.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested in how the logistics of your schools, like what does a school week look like for most kids, all kids? Is it customizable? Do families come in? How does that look like for?
It varies, just exactly like you said, because each student is individual, so we personalize it. Some people do not want to come into a facility at all, and so we work with the parent. Some of them want online curriculum because the parent doesn't feel comfortable teaching. They want the computer there, and then our teachers get online and work with the students. Some of it is the parents are doing stuff 3 days a week at home, and the school, or they're going into a learning center, a class to get enrichment opportunities. And then some of it is, like I explained this morning, that the school is happening 3 days a week in a collegiate model where direct instruction is being given, and then the students are working independently at home. So you have everything really in the independent study world available to these kids. They can go to community college if they need to go to community college. We can use the community as our classroom if we need to use the to enrich the student or to get this PE credit for the student. So we just try and use everything around us, and each of my 6 schools look different because they also have different communities and different needs and wants within those communities. And so they're all personalized to the community that they live in.
Yeah. Mine's a little tighter because my authorized is a little tighter. And so I would say 98% of my kids come on campus a day and a half a week. I have multiple campuses. We call them locations because I can't call them a satellite, right? Because that's a child term. Yeah, you just got to watch the language. And so I actually rent dance studios. And so I think I have 13 different locations. And so I'll rent a dance studio 1 day a week up in Logan and 1 day a week over here in Tooele, and then I have staff that do that. And so we create our curriculum at the top for the day, because if the kids are only on campus 1 day a week, it better be a rockin' solid day. So we do the curriculum at the top. It's project-based, hands-on, interactive. So they do that for the 1 day. Then we do tier 2 instruction online. And so they have Zoom small group. We're very much into data, looking at our data and figuring out what the kids need and really targeting the instruction to the individual that way. And then an additional half day, we'll go out with our bus to those locations we rent. We'll go out with the bus, pick the kids up and bring them back. And on that half day is when we take them out into the world and do different things. So that's the half day. They do the farm, they go ice skating, they do all sorts of different things.
And that's on $6,000 per student.
Yeah.
And you're based on enrollment, not ADA.
Right. With a little bit of both, but yeah. Yeah, Utah is one of the lowest funded per student. Yeah.
And how is your facility? How much does your facility cost based on?
My facility rent, because I'm only renting it still. I'm buying it this summer. My rent is $1.5 million a year on the main facility, not the additional ones.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we pay about $2 million for our facilities, and we get about
But
$9,000.
we figure we
Per
cannot
baby.
make ends meet with, we have to keep our cost of facility to $1,500 a student per year, or else we can't do our model.
Yeah, I get
So
that.
that's,
Well, that was one of the, so the school has been there for 12 years and it struggled for the first 6. And they hadn't purchased the building yet. And then I couldn't purchase the building because the state was trying to decide if I was a real charter school or not. And so we've taken us this long. During that period of time, I determined that our model would work better if we actually didn't have a building. Yeah, a main building that
We were going to
cost me
bus school
so
for a
much.
while too.
because $1 million, did you say?
$1.5 million.
Oh my God,
$1.5
that's a really high.
Oh, I know.
56,000 square feet, but this
On
is
6
Utah.
acres.
Yeah.
It is.
You need an angel investor.
Yeah, I need all sorts of things. Yeah, it is, but the state would not let me let go of the building, even though I didn't own it. They forced me to purchase the building, which is fine, whatever.
But they won't let you grow to the size that it's sustainable.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So don't you want to start a charter?
Oh,
No.
okay.
But it's still back to the why. You know, it is. It's hard, it's challenging, but you know, Mama can do hard things.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a different sort of question. So as a mother, do you just not balance that? I have 3 kids, 10, 12, 13. Do you just not balance that? Do you just pour everything in?
No, you have to balance that.
You have to
Your
balance
babies
family
come first.
And when my children had said that, I always see the computer on your lap. I'm
My
like,
son
you don't
just
remember?
said that to me.
You don't remember me driving you to every single soccer game? I was I took the team.
Yes.
You don't remember
Yes.
that? You don't remember when we went on?
Yes.
You don't remember that?
We had it on my computer, but I was at your dance class, I was at
We have an
And I took the
article
horn,
for
we
you
got
that
the
has
horn.
research that if your mom works, it has benefits for your girls and great benefits for your boys. We have an article that has research.
I was always a massive advocate of mom stays home with the children. That's me. Then my husband got chronically ill. I have no educational background, you all know that now. So for me to go out into the workforce was just like a huge leap. And all of a sudden, I mean, I didn't just go out and get a job at Walmart. I went out and ran a dang charter school, for goodness sakes, right? And so I'm with you on that, and I understand that, but you have to find where the balance and boundaries are for you. My girls, I have 4 girls still at home. My girls have thrived, and I look at them sometimes and go, you children are just amazing creatures. You have thrived under neglect. And I say that, but I am not a neglectful parent. You know, I say that because I'm out of the house a lot. But when I am there, and you would be too. You're exactly the same. You will be there with your children when you're there with your children, and that's what counts.
And that's what I say to all my staff members, you know, you need to focus on your family first, because I don't want your children to say the same thing my children did. And that's where, you know, this job is wonderful because we have flexibility in this job. We have some freedoms in this job that you don't have in a traditional school or a traditional world. And so that's great. And then how do you find people to come and work? Happy employees bring you happy people. And the piece of paper that we've kind of talked about in education, as we heard this afternoon, you know, everything is this stepping column. You know, your paper, and then how much more school have you gone to, or your additional school? That's very credit. Yeah. And so we are working on performance. We have a performance-based pay scale because this is so much more valuable than this.
Yeah.
And you know, we have vendors that are just fabulous at what they do. And so we believe that you need a variety of people and a variety of education. And in California, they're just pushing more and more and more. The paper is the only way. And it's like, oh, don't lock it into this box, because, you know, we have witnessed on the ground this beauty that happens in education when you've got some freedoms and some choice. And we will see what California does. California, I'm not sure if they're the model.
We're fighting.
But, you know, but if we could get the states thinking like this, from this mindset, and if we can get, you know, people in the legislature that have this mindset, then hopefully we can make some difference.
But I don't think you're wrong about the multiple authorizers. I think that's our avenue for California, is to get individual boards of county education offices to be pro-charter, because that's how you ensure. It's not about the legislators up in the state capitol.
Sure.
It's about the local boards and how positive they feel towards, you know. So the local elections are so much more important than I ever thought they were 40 years ago. I didn't understand how important the local elections were.
Well, for me, I got very politically involved, and that was huge. And I started connecting with my state charter school board, and I had advocates on there who I had taken to lunch and had long lunches with them, explaining my model and what I was doing, because I came to understand that was really the problem, is because they didn't understand what I was doing. They were scared to death of what I was doing, and they're like, you are just simply homeschooling, you are not educating these kids. I'm like, no, that is not what we're doing. Let me explain to you what we're doing. And they had no reference point, you know, no reference point to, anyway. So we had to spend a lot of time being politically involved, and a lot of time working those people and figuring it out and helping them to move from fear to understanding. So that really shifted for them, because they're good people. They're public servants too, you know, they're trying their best.
Well, I'm a homeschool lobbyist with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and before I got involved with them, the way we lobby here in Georgia, well, Georgia's an excellent state. Nobody cares what you do before the 8th grade. So, like, but that's a whole nother story. I mean, like, literally, no one cares what you are doing. We test every 3 years, and it's like, yeah, we standardize tests every 3 years. Nobody's Georgia, this here. Yeah, I'm a Kennesaw alumni, you know, whatever. So nobody really cares what you do, but before, because my homeschool group been around since 1989, and I'm president number 7, but 87 it became legal. And so what we started doing back then, because I've talked to some of the other presidents who were before me, and this is what they did beforehand. They basically decided that they were going to start teaching families to lobby, and this was before we joined the organization. And so what we would do, because here's the thing, people will not make legislation against people that they know. If I know you and I met your baby and I'm like, oh, he is just precious. He can tell me all about birds because he's just into ornithology. I am not going to legislate against that child. So what we have done, like even with my own teenagers, I have a 20, 18, 14, 11. My 18 and my 20-year-old have, I created them press kits. And their press kits are about their homeschool experience, and I helped them create it so they could. So when we went to DC to talk about homeschooling stuff, you know, my 20-year-old, he's a senior here at Kennesaw State. He's on computer science, and so in what is it, mechatronics department? It's like robotics or something. Anyway, so he went and he said, hey, I was a homeschooler, and when I was homeschooling, I got to travel and do robotics. And you know, I got to destroy stuff, and I learned physics, and we went to Six Flags, and we did the physics program, and then my 18-year-old, he's an actor with the Alliance Theater and Tyler Perry Studios, he was like, hey, I got a chance to act, and I got a chance to do all these different things. When you pull down the lobbying of it, to I see you as a human being and start to train little kids in it, it's a whole different experience because there's not a ton of Black homeschooling groups, just not.
That's true.
And so, but you know, we are a huge African American homeschooling group who's been around for a very long time, and so we walk into this community. So I've been encouraging every single parent, if you can, especially with Toastmasters or whatever, when you get that child to speak on homeschooling, and they're like, I enjoy it because whatever, we play with putty all day, but they talk about it with passion, you will be so surprised, and legislators will stop what they're doing and have a moment. If your state has a homeschooling day at the Capitol, if you do not have a homeschooling day at the Capitol, you need to contact your legislator, make sure you're on the docket to have a homeschooling day. We have a homeschooling day in here in Georgia, and I kid you not, it's hundreds, like thousands of people show up.
Here's the one step in the middle that you might have missed, is we cannot say we're homeschooling because we're actually not homeschoolers. So when you have a charter school, your kids are publicly funded, and your families can call themselves homeschooling, but that actually doesn't help our cause. Charters.
I guess with Georgia, we're so wonky with like your microplot, your homeschool, or whatever. We're just looking at you like, fill out an application, Declaration of Independence, and
I think to me that's one of our dilemmas is the fact that I'm still in between. I was going to say I'm a nobody, but I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say I'm in between because the homeschoolers look at me and say, well, you're not homeschool. I'm like, I'm not. And the charter schools look at me and say, well, you're not a real charter school. I'm like, I'm not. I'm in between. And that's where, for me, it's been such a difficult experience of blazing the trail, right? Because I'm on my own doing all this because the homeschoolers can say homeschooling all day long, and that actually hurts my cause a little bit. And charter schools can say charter school, that doesn't help me either. I'm it. So I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with what you're saying, but for me and for you, maybe it needs to be not just the homeschooling part, but we are with this hybrid charter school doing this and doing it differently, so it's different again.
We call ourselves, actually, I'm DeKalb Christian Home Educators. So in our big group, we basically say, do what you do, but because I get in grant funding and things like that, I actually have a fund where if a parent comes to me and says, I can't pay for this class, I will give you the money in your hand to go figure out how you're going to pay for that, but you don't have to cycle that money back into my group. You can spend it anywhere you want to spend
that's
it.
awesome.
So we give like up to $1,000 per family to say, do your thing and go in that direction.
That's
even if they spend it charter school, whatever they want to spend it. But I mean, hey, if I can call somebody on your behalf to be like, I'll scream with you, because what y'all are doing, that's cool. What you're doing is so cool.
I think the principle that you're talking about is very important, though. Utilizing what am I trying to say? Like helping parents organize and to voice that they are happy with what you're doing, and to like mobilize that force early, because as you start something, like the opposition is very great. And when we were starting Prenda, we talked to lots of lobbyists and lots of different, people we asked them, how small can we stay to like go under the radar, where the press won't notice us, where we won't be a target for people that don't want competition and things in education. And they said 2,000 students. And the second we hit 2,000 kids,
it changed.
Like, people know what you're doing, and people attacking us on Twitter, but without doing anything, our parents ran to Twitter and defended us. And everyone, they were quiet. They will not attack. When a mom says, this is helping my family, and this is our answer, legislators listen, angry weird people on Twitter listen.
The thing that actually hurt me was a little bit of that. And because my families believe they're homeschooling.
Because they call it homeschool,
Because they kept saying, well, I homeschool at Canyon Grove and it's the best program, they're actually hurting me. They actually caused more of the problem than they solved. And so it became an issue of needing to educate the parents on what to say and how to say it. And it just became such a struggle, because no matter how many times I told them, I love that you're a homeschooler, I'm a homeschooler too, but neither of us can say we're homeschooling because we're actually not. We're actually enrolled in a charter school. So yes, I totally agree, but unfortunately in the situation that I was in, I couldn't make that work for me. But that's an interesting thing to know.
Well, I think marketing-wise, I just think there's so much marketing-wise. If you have the ear of the publications that are coming out in your state, if you can shape the conversation before the adversary comes to try and shape that conversation, if we can get in our legislature's ears, if we can get in our public's ears, if we can be writing the press releases, be posting on these, if we can shape the conversation and we can control the language, I feel like that's where we will have so much more success, because once we get our own constituents to support us, then it's, I was listening to a gentleman earlier that said, in North Carolina, we do not, anybody else? Oh, there you are, it's right here. Listening to this guy. He said, you can't attack the homeschoolers. They'll go after, you will get brought down. And so if we can, and again, like the gentleman was saying today, we've got to do it. When you sit in a teacher meeting, teacher union meeting, it's nothing about the kid.
Oh, I know.
It's nothing about the student. But as a parent, it's all about my child. When you have, especially when you have a child, and there's so many kids with special needs. I'm going to advocate for my child not to get bullied, not to feel stupid, not to their gifts not to be devalued just because it's not science or tech, like math or like tech. That if we can, there's more of us than there are of them. We should be controlling the conversation.
But we can't, because everyone's watching Netflix.
Not homeschoolers.
No,
we don't.
Yes, we are watching Netflix because you can teach history. Netflix
is not an advocate. They don't have their I know how to talk to my legislator hat on.
I love
complacent.
I can tell y'all.
In California, we were getting attacked. And we just kept saying, "Don't make the homeschool mamas mad."
I know, because they
wouldn't
Mama
listen.
bears come out.
And so when they rolled out and were getting ready to vote, we had between 7,000 and 10,000 people who showed up to say, don't vote for this. It took like almost, did you watch it? It took all day for people to introduce themselves because they do this thing where you say, hi, I'm Donnie Eaton with Ivy Church Schools, vote no. And you just keep going. And there's like a couple of union people in there and everybody's just like, you know, they like, vote yes or whatever. So, so then they vote, but they are so full of themselves, those legislators on like the ed committee, that they didn't listen and they voted to pass it. And I'm just like, how can they do that?
Not full of themselves, they're full of money from
Right.
lobby groups.
But they also think, well, I got the power, I can do whatever. You don't matter, mama.
80%, they've done studies, 80% of the people can be for something and still the legislators vote against it because the people, consensus is not what's running this country at all.
And I think it's because as a group, we were too flat-footed too long in California. So creating press kits and organizing, super important. We're behind the ball in California and just now starting to catch up, believe it or not.
Well, because we were running charter
But we need those press kits. Can you send me one?
Well, I was going to say,
an example.
You think you're behind the ball? I sit here from Utah by myself.
I know.
And how many? It's
Girl, you're a loco now.
I am I appreciate that, but I think that's it too. I think it's also us establishing a community and saying, you know what, I'm here for you. I got your back. Hey, what's going on in your world? And
really seeing this as a community instead of competition.
Yes.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yes.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, sort of shameless self-promotion. So we at EdChoice do parent advocacy trainings. So, number one, please take some of our stuff at our table because I have to take it if you don't. So all the sunglasses, remember, like literally, like children, grandchildren, friends. Yes, take it. Take anything that isn't nailed down. You can take the table. It's not mine. But we do parent advocacy training, which can help. But one of the other things too is, so yes, it's amazing to see 7,000 to 10,000 people show up for something, but I can understand how that's intimidating to think of how are we going to organize that many people. One thing that you can say, just even like basics, like a hearing, like a legislative hearing about one of these bills. If you really break down like the mechanics of it, it's like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours long. So that means they're going to let like 10 to 15 people on either side of that testify. And if the people that are for it are 10 to 15 parents and school leaders, and the 10 to 15 people against it are lobbyists and like paid representatives for something else, the imbalance there shows. Because I, as someone who has testified a lot of times for these things, as a quote unquote expert on these things, me versus a mom or a child, whatever, it's like I can't even hold a candle to them. And so if your hearing is, if it's like the union lobbyist and me, right? People, whatever, doesn't necessarily change anybody's mind. So it's like, well, that guy's gonna say that, and that guy's gonna say that, whatever. But if it's like union lobbyist parent, union lobbyist child, whatever, the whole vibe of it is completely different. And so even if you can cultivate a core group of 15 or 20 parents and families that have like the flexibility and such that for the few times a year where there might be a school board hearing or there might be a state board of education hearing, and do the work of the kind of preparing them, doing mock testimony and throwing questions at them and whatever, like that can be incredibly helpful in convincing people to understand like the real human impact of what they talk about. Because if it's people like me, it's numbers and charts and graphs and whatever, but it's actual person who's like, I'm thriving in the school, I wasn't thriving in the school environment before me. It's incredibly powerful.
That's the testimony. The hard part is I've watched so many times, that seems to be when the legislatures take a break.
Oh yeah, you'll see lots of people who are not there.
It was 10 people, you know, and now it's 3. What happened? Yeah. And that's the sad part is they don't really hear, but we really have been working on going to our local. Go to your local office, go to your local office, go to your local office, because that's where, you know.
And you can send a postcard.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we send out postcards, and so I'm a robotics coach, and I have FLL robotics, and I do FTC and stuff like that. So when our kids won state, we literally took a picture of them, and they're on the I think right now they're on the Vela site too, where it's like we took a picture of them. We said, look what these amazing homeschoolers did, or you know when they went to state and you know they won mechanical design, when our Science Olympiad team won something, we were like, so I sometimes will like send out, and so I have one parent who she is our legislative liaison, she sits on our board, and that's all she does is like take little things and she prints them and sends them out and we'll even show up on one day, like we went to something with Raphael Warnock, and then I think it was close to his birthday, and we came and brought him a birthday card. And so the kids were like, and so he's looking like, okay, this is weird. But it doesn't take a heavy hand when you're doing it with kids. I mean, my Girl Scouts won the Bronze Award recently, the group. And so we were just like, hey, we did this for our community garden. We basically reached out, we found out, I can't remember which one of the legislators like actually gardens, because we were like stalking them on their Facebook. And so then we were like, we garden too, here's our thing. And so we do strategic, one of my parents said, we are like stalkers. I was like, I know, right? So we go in such a way to figure out, what about you as human that I can touch, sure. Because some of them are just automatically like, I don't want to talk to you. Yeah. I don't want to talk to you. But when we can do that, we figure out a way to kind of pierce them, and you will watch them, their voting kind of alter and change here and there or some things. But it does take one parent who you're going to say, hey, I need for you, can you do this and be on this board to do this for this year? And once you find that parent who say, I don't mind just sending out stuff and making sure that happens, it can really work. But I'm sorry that I didn't know that homeschooling hurt you and it was labeled a weird way.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. It shouldn't, but yes.
And,
just a thought for any of you, a homeschool, charter school, whatever. If you have an event going on, invite your legislator, your local legislator. Just bring, I'm sure you do that. That makes a big difference so that you're building the relationship over time instead of relying on a one-time, hey, vote no, or vote yes. It's that back to what you were saying earlier, the relationship. If they have a relationship, I know that person, and they run a great school, or they run a great co-op, or whatever, it's just, it changes the feeling, it changes, in some cases, the outcome.
Yeah. And it puts you in the realm for congressional, there's a congressional appropriation dollars out there. So if you're dealing with your congressman, and you find, and it's time for those congressional appropriation dollars, which is April, and they need to submit, it's April, and they need to submit for this, then your nonprofit or a group can be on that list and they say, hey, we're gonna put yours forward so we can help you fund your thing. Yeah. Because they have a relationship and they know you and they feel good about actually, writing a request on your behalf.
All right, let's give our panelists a round of applause.